Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, 1993 to 1998, wasn't just another family drama. It was a cultural phenomenon of the 90s, bringing millions of viewers into the world of Colorado Springs and the fearless frontier doctor, Michaela Quinn, played by Jane Seymour. The series blended romance, medical struggles, and the fight for justice on the American frontier, making it one of the most memorable shows of its time. But away from the screen's heartwarming moments, real-life tragedy has struck the cast. Over the years, several beloved actors who gave life to these unforgettable characters have sadly passed away, leaving behind devoted fans and bittersweet memories. In this video, we honor the stars we've lost from Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Orson Bean was born on July 22, 1928, and at 65, he stepped into the role of Lauren Bray in 1993, the cranky yet oddly lovable storekeeper of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. On screen, Lauren was stubborn and profit-driven, resisting change at every turn until compassion cracked through his gruff shell, making him a fan favorite. Off-screen, Bean's story was far less wholesome. Born Dallas Frederick Burroughs into a strict New England household, his father was a cold, authoritarian figure, leaving Bean to fend emotionally for himself, hiding pain behind jokes. That survival mechanism carried him into show business, where he became a celebrated wit, but also a man chasing validation in dangerous ways. Blacklisted during the McCarthy era after being linked to Communist Party meetings through a girlfriend, he was humiliated publicly and forced to scrape by on small gigs, a wound he covered with humor but never forgave. Throughout his career, Bean had affairs, a volatile first marriage that ended in betrayal, and a reputation for being unfiltered to the point of cruelty. Insiders whispered about his gambling debts and his biting temper that erupted when producers tried to cut his scenes. His greatest professional humiliation came in the 1960s, when a network abruptly canceled his variety program after executives grew weary of his political jokes, a crushing blow that left him bitter toward Hollywood elites. He later reinvented himself as a raconteur, appearing on The Tonight Show hundreds of times, but always circling back to the sting of being discarded. Privately, his life was scarred by tragedy. His daughter, actress Michelle Bean, died suddenly at just 23, a loss that haunted him. On February 7, 2020, at the age of 91, Bean's life ended violently when he was struck by two cars in Los Angeles, his body broken on asphalt in a grim twist of fate. At the time of his death, he left behind an estate of roughly $4 million, made up of his Los Angeles home, investments, and royalties. Though remembered as a witty elder statesman of entertainment, his legacy carries the darker weight of scandal, political suspicion, and family tragedy that fame could never erase. Larry Sellers was born on October 2, 1949, and at 44 he was cast in 1993 as Cloud Dancing in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, the serene Cheyenne healer who became the conscience of the show. On screen, he embodied wisdom, dignity, and spirituality, serving as both ally and critic to the settlers of Colorado Springs, bridging cultures with patience. But Sellers' childhood was harsh. Born in Oklahoma, of Osage, Cherokee, and Lakota descent, he grew up ridiculed in school for his heritage, forced to suppress his identity in a society that mocked Native culture. Those scars forged his lifelong crusade to reclaim tradition, yet his intensity often isolated him in Hollywood. He was vocal about the industry's exploitation of Native actors, sometimes clashing with producers and writers on set, earning a reputation as hard to handle when he refused to perpetuate stereotypes. That stubbornness cost him roles, with insiders recalling how casting directors labeled him too militant, effectively blackballing him from mainstream projects. Though he had no public scandals of substance, whispers circulated of his temper and his habit of calling out co-stars for insensitivity, which alienated even allies. His greatest career disappointment came after Dr. Quinn ended. He struggled to secure steady work, bitterly observing that Hollywood only wanted Native characters in feathers and buckskins. In his personal life, his relationships were turbulent. Rumors of affairs and a marriage strained by long absences haunted him, while his children reportedly grew distant from his strictness. Later years brought grief when close relatives died young, compounding his sense of injustice. Despite his advocacy as a ceremonial leader and language instructor, he battled health issues quietly, never admitting vulnerability publicly. On December 9, 2021, Sellers died at age 72, though details of his final years remain shadowed. His estate was never substantial, likely under $1 million, consisting of teaching materials, modest savings, and cultural artifacts. Though not rich in money, Sellers left behind something more volatile, a reputation as both a proud warrior for native rights and a man whose fiery principles made him both admired and feared in Hollywood. Johnny Cash, born February 26, 1932, in Kingsland, Arkansas, entered the world of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1993 at the age of 61, taking on the role of Kid Cole, a weathered gunslinger haunted by his violent past yet seeking redemption. His portrayal resonated with audiences because it was indistinguishable from the man himself, a brooding legend with a heart torn between sin and salvation. But the myth of the Man in Black was as much built on chaos as on talent. Cash's childhood was steeped in hardship, scarred by poverty and the tragic death of his older brother Jack, a wound that never healed and fueled much of his tortured artistry. Despite his global fame, his career was plagued with spectacular collapses. Multiple arrests in the 1960s for drug smuggling, amphetamine abuse, and public intoxication, culminating in near career-destroying scandals when he set fire to a California forest while high. At his lowest, the industry nearly abandoned him, branding him unstable and uninsurable. His greatest humiliation came when Columbia Records dropped him after decades of chart-topping success, forcing him to crawl back into the spotlight years later through raw, stripped-down recordings that redefined his legacy. His personal life was equally volatile. His first marriage to Vivian Liberto dissolved in bitterness amid accusations of infidelity and drug binges, while even his eventual partnership with June Carter, though legendary, was forged through chaos and codependency. Friends recounted his volcanic temper and manipulative tendencies when under the grip of narcotics. Illness caught up with him late in life, as diabetes ravaged his health and left him increasingly frail. On September 12, 2003, he died in Nashville at the age of 71, just months after June's death, leaving behind an empire of music, but also stories of destruction. At his death, his estate was worth approximately $60 million, including royalties, property, and publishing rights, a staggering fortune that belied the chaos and addiction that nearly ruined him. June Carter Cash, born June 23, 1929, in Maces Spring, Virginia, entered Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1993 at the age of 64, playing Sister Ruth, a character whose serene wisdom and nurturing spirit stood in stark contrast to the turbulence of her private life. Audiences adored her gentle performance, yet few understood how much pain and sacrifice she carried into every role. Raised in the famed Carter family dynasty, she was thrust into music as a child, enduring relentless pressure and the loss of privacy while struggling with her own insecurities. Though she was celebrated for her humor and wit, behind the curtain she wrestled with heartbreak, failed marriages, and the burden of supporting Johnny Cash through his darkest years of addiction. She had once been branded disloyal when her second marriage to Edwin Nix crumbled amid accusations of infidelity, fueling small-town gossip that followed her into her career. Even her union with Cash, while romanticized by the public, was stormy, defined by constant battles with his drug dependency and volatile moods. Friends whispered that she often acted more as his warden than his wife. Professionally, she faced her own disappointments, as her solo projects were repeatedly overshadowed by Johnny's towering fame, with critics dismissing her as little more than a sidekick. Yet her biggest failure came in the 1970s, when an ambitious album she poured her soul into was shelved indefinitely, a humiliation that stung for decades. Health troubles plagued her later years, including heart disease and a growing dependence on prescription medications, echoing the struggles of the man she loved. On May 15, 2003, she died in Nashville at the age of 73 following complications from heart surgery, her passing sending shockwaves through country music and leaving Johnny devastated. At her death, her estate was valued at around $20 million, bolstered by royalties, touring revenues, and songwriting rights. A testament to a woman whose resilience kept her family's legacy alive, even as she sacrificed her own ambitions. Richard Mall, born on January 13, 1943 in Pasadena, California, stepped into the role of John in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman in 1994 at the age of 51. John was written as a towering but misunderstood character, a man whose size and booming voice concealed a fragile humanity, mirroring the contradictions many saw in Mall himself. While audiences adored John's vulnerability beneath his intimidating frame, Mall's real life was far from the quiet compassion his character offered. Raised in a fractured family that struggled with money and fractured relationships, he carried the weight of alienation from a young age. Bullied mercilessly for his abnormal height, these scars bled into his Hollywood journey. Despite his comedic fame as Bull Shannon in Night Court, Mall often found himself pigeonholed, mocked behind closed doors by producers who saw him as nothing more than a freak act. His career, though dotted with success, was also defined by humiliation. His desperate attempts to land serious dramatic roles frequently collapsed, culminating in one of his most painful failures when a Shakespearean stage revival he championed was scrapped due to his rumored clashes with fellow actors over his domineering behavior and erratic moods. Off-screen, his marriages crumbled under allegations of infidelity and erratic drinking habits, leaving him estranged from partners and even distant from his children. Though fans saw him as a jovial giant, Mall privately battled depression, paranoia, and the emptiness of a career that never allowed him the respect he craved. On October 26, 2023, Mall died at his home in Big Bear Lake, California, at the age of 80 from natural causes, leaving behind a net worth of approximately $7 million. A fortune pieced together from decades of acting and voice work, yet haunted by the legacy of an artist forever yearning for recognition beyond the shadow of his size. Nick Ramus was born on September 9, 1929, and at 64 he joined Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman in 1993 as Chief Black Kettle, the stoic, peace-seeking leader caught between brutal expansion and the survival of his people. On screen, he exuded dignity, often portrayed as a tragic figure struggling to preserve harmony in the face of violence. But Ramus's life off-screen was unpredictable and chaotic. The child of a Greek immigrant father and Blackfoot mother, he endured a confusing upbringing marked by cultural conflict and poverty, mocked by both native and white peers as belonging to neither world. That rootless identity pushed him into a restless adulthood. He studied chemistry, attempted medical school, quit, then raced motorcycles dangerously before drifting into acting. Hollywood saw him as exotic and imposing, but typecasting plagued his career, and he often complained bitterly about being offered only Indian chief roles, which he accepted reluctantly to survive. His bluntness in interviews where he accused producers of racism branded him as difficult, and he found himself edged out of projects. His greatest humiliation came in the 1970s when a television deal collapsed after he publicly criticized the network, effectively stalling his career for years. His personal life was marked by instability. He married and divorced multiple times, often accused of being emotionally cold and unfaithful, and his children reportedly kept their distance. He was known for his arrogance at auditions, belittling younger actors, and his sharp temper that alienated colleagues. Later years brought crushing misfortunes, declining health, financial troubles, and friends lost to illness, leaving him isolated. By the time he was cast in Dr. Quinn, it felt like a career revival, though behind the scenes he struggled with heavy drinking and bitterness over missed opportunities. On May 30th, 2007, Ramus died in Benson, Arizona, at 77, from pneumonia complicated by a lung neoplasm. His estate was modest, valued under $1 million, consisting mostly of a small Arizona home and residuals from past roles. George Furth was born on December 14, 1932, in Chicago, Illinois, And he was 61 when he stepped into Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman in 1993 as Jedediah Bancroft, a pompous yet strangely endearing character who embodied the arrogance of wealth without the cruelty. On screen, he was comic relief with a sharp edge, but off-screen, Furth was far more layered and troubled. Raised in a strict, cold household where affection was scarce, he carried wounds of shame and secrecy from his youth, constantly bullied for his appearance and mocked for his soft-spoken manner. Though he achieved brilliance as a Tony-winning playwright, celebrated for his collaborations with Stephen Sondheim, Hollywood treated him as a perpetual second-string actor, never granting him the spotlight he craved. His most painful professional failure came when his own musical, conceived without Sondheim's input, collapsed after opening week on Broadway, leaving him devastated and branded as an artist who could not stand alone. In his private life, Furth lived as a closeted gay man during decades when exposure meant career suicide. He formed relationships that were kept hidden, often tormented by secrecy and the toll of rejection from his conservative family. Friends whispered about his reliance on alcohol to cope with loneliness, and though he avoided public scandal, he carried the scars of living inauthentically for much of his life. He died on August 11, 2008 in Santa Monica at age 75 from an infection, leaving behind an estate worth between $1 to $2 million, much of it tied to Broadway royalties and television residuals. His wealth seemed modest compared to his talent, and his death highlighted the tragedy of a man who gave the world brilliance, yet was denied open acceptance in his lifetime. Stacy Keach Sr., born May 29, 1914, in Chicago, Illinois, appeared in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1996 as Judge Webster at the age of 82, a character whose stern authority mirrored the gravitas Keach had long cultivated on screen. Audiences saw in Judge Webster a symbol of justice and stability, but Keach's real story was steeped in contradictions. Growing up during the Great Depression, he carried the wounds of an unstable childhood, forced to abandon youthful ambitions in order to support a family that could never quite escape the grip of financial despair. His Hollywood journey was marked by constant struggle. Though he found steady work as a character actor, his attempts to gain control behind the camera were rife with failure. Projects he tried to produce in the 1950s collapsed due to budget overruns and bitter disputes with financiers, leaving him branded as unreliable. His reputation took further blows in the 1960s when whispers spread of his aggressive temper, his rumored affairs during his marriage, and his heavy drinking, which alienated him from colleagues and friends. The shadow of his famous sons, Stacy Keach Jr. and James Keach, became both a source of pride and humiliation, as many whispered that he survived in Hollywood only because of their growing fame rather than his own merit. His personal life was filled with strife. His marriage, though long, was scarred by infidelity and constant disputes, and his children often described him as distant, more invested in his work than his family. By the 1980s, his health began to decline, but he stubbornly clung to his career, even as offers dwindled. On February 13, 2003, Keach died in Burbank, California, at the age of 88 from congestive heart failure, leaving behind a net worth under $1 million. Though respected for his longevity, his story was ultimately one of a man haunted by unfulfilled ambitions, overshadowed by the brilliance of others, and remembered more for the authority he projected on screen than the chaos that defined his private life. Gregory Sierra, born January 25, 1937 in Manhattan, New York, took on the role of General Ely Samuel Parker in 1994 at the age of 57, embodying a dignified statesman who fought for Native American rights with quiet resolve and steely wisdom. On screen, he radiated authority and compassion, but Sierra's real life carried far darker shades. Raised in East Harlem in a family burdened by poverty and cultural isolation, he was bullied as a child for his heritage and accent, leaving him with deep insecurities masked by intensity on stage. He clawed his way into Hollywood through off-Broadway grit, but endured years of rejection, often typecast into ethnic caricatures he despised. His career contained bursts of brilliance, Sanford and Son, Barney Miller, Miami Vice, but also humiliations, like being abruptly dropped from shows after conflicts with producers who found him too outspoken and difficult. His most devastating personal tragedy came when his second wife took her own life, an event that plunged him into depression, bouts of drinking, and erratic behavior that cost him opportunities. Colleagues described him as a man of immense talent, yet prone to explosive tempers, suspicious of Hollywood executives, and known for long feuds with co-stars. Financial instability haunted him. Despite decades in television, he never secured leading roles that brought wealth, leaving him to rely on modest guest appearances. In his later years, Sierra fought quietly against cancer, withdrawing from the public eye, haunted by regret over a career that never matched his potential. He died on January 4, 2021, in Laguna Woods, California, at 83 from stomach and liver cancer. His estate was modest, reportedly under $1 million, consisting mostly of a small home and residual checks. A sobering reminder of how a respected actor. Edward Albert was born on February 20th, 1951, in Los Angeles, California, and he was 42 when he appeared in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1993 as Doctor. William Burke, a charming physician whose progressive ideals and compassion resonated with viewers. On screen, he was a man ahead of his time, but in reality, Albert carried both privilege and pain. The son of Hollywood royalty, actor Eddie Albert and actress Margot, he grew up in a glamorous but fractured household where fame cast long shadows, and he constantly felt pressure to prove himself beyond his parents' reputations. Though he gained attention in Butterflies Are Free, which won him a Golden Globe, his career sputtered after a series of critical failures, including leading roles in low-budget films that flopped so badly they nearly derailed his career. Privately, Albert was passionate, intense, and difficult. Colleagues often found him controlling, with a tendency to lecture co-stars and clash with producers, leaving him branded as self-righteous. His love life was no less stormy. He was once engaged to actress Kate Jackson, but their split was bitter, and gossip suggested jealousy, control, and his resistance to her fame poisoned the relationship. While Albert poured his energy into activism for Native American and environmental causes, some accused him of neglecting his own career, sacrificing opportunities in the name of causes that drained his finances. His greatest heartbreak came in his later years as he became caretaker to his father while secretly battling lung cancer, a struggle he concealed until the disease overwhelmed him. He died on September 22, 2006, in Malibu at 55, leaving behind an estate of about $5 million, largely from family inheritance, investments, and acting royalties. His death cut short a life that, despite its privilege and recognition, was scarred by unfulfilled potential and turbulent relationships, leaving the haunting impression of a man who fought harder for others than he did for himself. Nicholas Pryor, born January 28, 1935 in Baltimore, Maryland, entered Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1994 at 59, portraying Senator George Stewart, a polished politician whose calm eloquence and subtle duplicity mirrored Washington's power brokers. Audiences saw poise and control, but Pryor's life was more turbulent than his refined exterior suggested. As a child, he grew up in a family fractured by alcoholism and financial strain, mocked for his stammer, and often forced to hide his feelings behind a cultivated air of intelligence. At Yale, he fought to reinvent himself, yet Hollywood offered rejection after rejection, dismissing him as too bland, until he carved out a career as a dependable supporting actor. Beneath the steady facade, Pryor bore scars of bitterness. He was known to seethe quietly when passed over for larger roles, and he clashed with casting directors who accused him of being unimaginative and rigid. His greatest humiliation came during the 1980s when he was almost cast in a leading television drama, but was replaced at the last moment by a younger actor, an event that devastated him and, according to friends, drove him into a reclusive period of drinking and withdrawal. His personal life carried instability. 2 marriages ended in bitter divorces, with accusations of neglect and affairs, and he endured years of estrangement from his children before reconciling later. Though never tabloid fodder, insiders whispered of a man who carried deep anger behind his genteel mask, a perfectionist whose need for control alienated many collaborators. In his later years, cancer ravaged him, and he spent his final days in relative obscurity, remembered by only a circle of loyal friends and longtime fans. Nicholas Pryor died on October 7, 2024. In Wilmington, North Carolina, at the age of 89. His estate, valued between $2 and $3 million, consisted of carefully invested savings, property, and decades of residual income. A quiet but steady fortune for an actor who spent nearly 70 years in Hollywood without ever breaking into true stardom. Lloyd Bochner, born July 29, 1924, in Toronto, Canada, joined Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman in 1994 at age 70, playing Senator Elliot Moses, a suave manipulator whose moral ambiguity perfectly suited Bochner's trademark blend of charm and menace. On screen, he thrived in roles of power, but his off-screen reality was layered with contradictions. Born into a strict immigrant household during the Depression, he grew up under a domineering father who pushed him relentlessly, creating a lifelong drive tinged with resentment. Bochner became a Hollywood staple, yet he suffered constant rejection in his early career, mocked for his Canadian accent and dismissed as too polished for gritty roles. His defining failure came in the late 1960s when he was cast as the lead in a major studio project, only to be abruptly fired after the first week of filming, a professional disgrace that haunted him for years. He was known in industry circles as fiercely intelligent, but also combative, unwilling to tolerate directors he deemed incompetent, and he developed a reputation as someone difficult to manage. His personal life, while outwardly stable, carried whispers of infidelity and rumored affairs with younger actresses during his long marriage, a scandal he always denied. He also immersed himself in political activism, co-founding a committee against media violence, but privately he was criticized for hypocrisy as he continued to profit from roles that glamorized brutality. Later in life, illness shadowed him, and the decline was bitter for a man once renowned for vitality and control. Lloyd Bochner died on October 29, 2005, in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 81 from cancer. His estate was valued at around $5 million, including real estate, investments, and substantial Hollywood residuals. His legacy lives partly through his son, Hart Bochner, who carried on the acting tradition. But the elder Bochner remains remembered not only for his silky villains, but also for a career haunted by clashes, pride, and secrets hidden behind a polished smile. Pamela Kosh, born October 1, 1928, in Crayford, Kent, England, took on the role of Martha in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman in 1993, when she was 65 years old. Martha was the embodiment of quiet strength, a practical woman whose steady wisdom gave stability to a world often in chaos, and audiences quickly grew attached to her. Yet behind the mask of serenity, Kosh's life was anything but peaceful. As a child in war-torn England, she endured bombings, poverty, and a family so cold and fractured that she often spoke of feeling invisible in her own home. That early invisibility shaped her. Though she became a pioneering theater director and a fixture in television, she was dogged by rejection, dismissed for her plain looks in an industry that prized glamour. Her attempts to break through as a leading lady were consistently sabotaged, and her bitterness often surfaced in sharp, combative clashes with directors and producers. At one point in the late 1960s, she was quietly blacklisted from a major studio for her difficult behavior, forcing her into smaller roles in stage work. Scandals followed her too. Rumors of affairs with married co-stars, explosive feuds with fellow actresses who accused her of manipulation, and whispers of a gambling habit that consumed much of her modest income. Her personal life was equally turbulent. A short-lived marriage ended in bitterness, and her attempts at motherhood were marked by heartbreak, with estrangement from her only child who resented her career-first choices. Despite these struggles, she fought fiercely to carve a place for herself in Hollywood, though her reputation as a demanding perfectionist never left her. Pamela Kosh died on May 4, 2022, in Burbank, California, at the age of 93, reportedly from natural causes, with a net worth under $1 million. A reminder that even a lifetime of work in television could leave an actress respected but financially modest. Her true legacy buried beneath the scandals few dared to recall publicly. Dennis Lipscomb was born on March 1, 1942, in Westbury, New York, and he was 52 when he played President Ulysses S. Grant in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman in 1994. On screen, he radiated gravitas, the steely authority of a war hero turned statesman, but the man behind the role carried a quieter, more painful story. Raised in a fractured working-class family, he endured constant instability. His father's violent temper and his mother's depression left him scarred, learning early to hide behind books and music. A gifted Shakespearean actor, Lipscomb spent years in the trenches of repertory theater, often broke and living in tiny rentals, while watching less talented actors skyrocket past him in Hollywood. His career's cruelest blow came when he was cast as a lead in a 1980s drama that was abruptly canceled after 2 episodes, a humiliation that marked him as unlucky in the industry and shut doors for years. Though he earned respect for character roles, his frustration bubbled into bouts of arrogance and conflict with directors, leaving him branded as difficult by some producers. His personal life was fragile. Never marrying, he drifted through a series of brief romances, many ending in betrayal, and he often turned to alcohol to numb loneliness. A secret passion for bluegrass music and rescuing animals kept him tethered to life. Yet his financial situation remained precarious. He supported himself through modest roles in voice work, but never achieved stability. He died on July 30th, 2014, at age 72, from undisclosed causes, quietly in obscurity. His estate was modest, under $1 million, a far cry from Hollywood fortunes, yet friends remembered him as a brilliant, tragic figure whose generosity to animals and stubborn dedication to his craft left a more enduring legacy than wealth ever could. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, 1993 to 1998 who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.